Okay, so causes of World War II. The first thing that was part of the causes of World War II was the Weimar Republic. And this was basically a government that Germany set up, and they thought that it was fair, and they thought that it could be like another representation of democracy. But it was actually a huge disaster. So it resulted in dozens of tiny parties with no party strong enough to get a majority. This basically meant that all these tiny parties were trying to put in their say, and they didn't have any say because the bigger parties would rule them out. So this was a major weakness in the Republic of Germany. Germany was not allowed to join, and Russia was also excluded due to a growing fear of communism. So this meant that two major countries were not part of the League, and that was detrimental. So other countries decided not to join, and some joined but later left. So this was just one of the reasons why it was not an efficient League. Also, the League had no power, and this meant that the main weapon of the League was to ask member countries to stop trading with aggressive countries. However, this did not work because countries did not follow this rule and they still traded. And that was another reason. Also, the League had no army, and soldiers were to be supplied by member countries, and some of the countries did not work with each other and trade with each other. The current Prime Minister of Britain, Neville Chamberlain, wanted to make appeasement with Hitler. And he felt that giving in to Hitler's demands would prevent another war, and that's why he created this. So this policy was known as appeasement, and it was eventually betrayed when Hitler decided to betray the Munich Conference and invade most of Czechoslovakia. On September 1st, Poland was struck with bombs, and Germany had declared that they would destroy the nation to use for concentration camps for the Jews. So towns and villages were repeatedly bombed to create a fleeing mass of scared civilians to block the roads and slow down the reinforcements to the front that were needed.
Blitzkrieg!
In the 1930s, Spain was an extremely divided party, and the Republicans were on the left wing and the Nationalists were on the right wing. So with these two clashing parties, there followed a period where the rivals had periods in power in the elected government, so they were always clashing with each other. The country was so divided and unstable that in 1936 the army rebelled and forcibly removed the Republicans from power. The last cause for World War II was called American isolationism, and it's basically what it means. America was isolated from all the countries in Europe, and they decided to stay away from any military affairs that they could so they could not be part of the war. So one of the main reasons that isolationism was so successful was that the isolationists, or the group, included progressives, conservatives, business owners, peace activists, and many more, but they faced no consistent organized opposition from internationalists, and their ideology triumphed time and time again. And this basically meant that no one was really opposing the isolationists and that no one was going against them, so they basically had free rein to spread their opinion whenever they wanted to.
Welcome to the European theaters. As you can see with my creative art, European theater. No. How? Alright, first we're going to talk about first we're going to talk about the major battles that happened. Battle of Stalingrad, D-Day, Battle of Britain, and then much more. But except those were the major ones. Now we're going to go on to Vichy, France. So what happened in Vichy, France was when Germany finally took over France, they left the southern parts to some other guys, and they're like, yeah, we'll let you have it, just don't take us over. And they're like, alright, yeah, sure, we'll work with you. The guy who ruled there was... His name is very hard to pronounce. Pétain. I can't really say it because it's kind of like a curse word in French, but his name is Pétain. And he was the one who led the government, but also worked with the Nazis kind of, but all was good. And it was called Vichy, France because the major capital was Vichy. Finally, we go on to the Battle of Britain. It was the last major offensive for the Europeans. I do not have a Battle of Britain with me currently, but don't worry about it. You know it's in Britain and it's a battle. So it was the last major offensive, and the Europeans attacked from all ways, east, south, and north. And this is where Hitler, during the battle, finally committed suicide with his wife. His wife and I were probably joking around, no, you kill yourself, no, you! And then they had this entire thing, and then like, oh, they're here, okay, kill ourselves. Alright, next we go on to the Battle of Stalingrad, which was a very difficult battle for both the Germans and the Russians. It was a very long battle that continued to strive, a lot of artillery guns, as you can see. Initially, the Germans had planned on stopping the Allies as they crossed Rhine, but they failed to destroy the Ludendorff Bridge, which allowed the U.S. forces to successfully cross over and help the Russians take over the Germans. Finally, we go on to the Allied leaders. And as you can see right here, Allied leaders, Winston Churchill, you got Truman or Roosevelt, and then you got Stalin. And then for the Axis powers, the leaders were Mr. Hitler, Mr. Mussolini, and then the Japanese emperor guy. What was his name again?
Hiroto.
Hiroto. Right, exactly. Alright, and then finally we go on to D-Day, which was the storming of Normandy, and it was a very difficult battle to win, especially with the Germans placed so well in the battle. They were on top of a hill, the Allies were coming in boats, lined up, getting ready to get gunned down. Very bloody battle, but except the Allies did manage to pull through and win this battle, and it was a major turning point because they were able to enter in France and liberate it free from all the German soldiers.
Welcome to the Pacific Theater. Our first topic today will be Pearl Harbor, which started it. So, on December 7th, 1941, Japan went to Hawaii, Pearl Harbor, and bombed pretty much all our Navy and ships. Luckily, our 3 aircraft carriers were out running a practice mission, so they did not get bombed.
Wait, but Jack.
Yeah, Adrian?
What would happen if we didn't have those 3 aircraft carriers?
Well, we'd be screwed.
We would?
Yeah.
Damn.
Anyway, there were, in the end, about 2,400 dead and 1,200 wounded. So, our second topic is island hopping.
Ooh.
And this was led by Douglas MacArthur after the Battle of Midway, where they would go around heavily fortified islands, isolating them, and taking the less fortified islands on their way to Japan. Welcome to Island Hopping, Season 1. As you can see here, I took this island, and we're gonna move on, follow. So as we're coasting along here, we're spotting an island. And it looks just a tad bit too fortified. So, instead of taking it on, I'm just gonna skip it, I'll isolate it. And you see this island over here, it's dumb. It's got nothing. So I'm just gonna walk on over here. Just took that over. See that? It's mine now. And that was isolated, so I win. Some of the major battles at the Pacific Theater were one, the Battle of Midway, which was the U.S. versus Japan. Japan was led by Isoroku Yamamoto. And this was the turning point in the war for the U.S. Japan lost 2,500 people and we lost 307. The Battle of Coral Sea was like a turning point in naval warfare that used more airfare instead of ships. And that was between U.S., Japan, and Australia. The last one, major one, was Guadalcanal, which was also known as Operation Watchtower. And this was the start of the U.S. offense in the war, and when Japanese realized it couldn't keep up with the U.S. industrially.
Wait, but what would have happened if they kept up industrially? Do you
Well,
think they could have, maybe beat us?
They could have had a better chance. We were building so much more and so much faster that we could keep restocking our army, and we would have had a lot harder time, and with their will to fight to the death, it could have been a very different story if they had equal industrialization.
Mm-hmm.
And the 2 main things that ended the war were the fire bombings of Japan, which took more. They took 200,000 and 900,000 dead because of the B-29 bomber, and this took more deaths than the atomic bombs, as you can see here, which were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and those took 270,000 people dead. The reason they dropped these bombs was because they wanted a total surrender.
Population. So first we have Crystal Natch. That started in November 9, 1938. And what happened is that Nazis sent the troops to Jewish home and destroyed them. Destroyed their home, destroyed their business, destroyed their synagogues, and they killed at least 100 Jews. It killed a lot of Jewish, put them in ghettos, and So the Nazis claimed that all non-Aryan people, particularly Jewish people, were inferior. This racist message would eventually lead to the Holocaust, and the Holocaust technically is a systematic mass slaughter of Jewish and other groups judged inferior by the Nazis.